Hello everybody and welcome to Army Painting Series 20. This one we're going to go back into the Age of Sigmar world and we're going to try the Ossiarch Bone Reapers. And there's a couple of things, I don't want to say some old, some new, but there had been a whole lot of requests about painting, well, things like bone. As you can see here, even on now they're just pretty much using different glazes of contrast painter, but you can see the differences in the colorations there. And I had done an old painting pyramid video back 8 years ago. So that's the last time I did a video just specifically trying to represent the painting of bone. And I thought, well, why don't we reprise that now that we have I didn't I didn't have figures like this back in the day. So while I do want to I have a lot of other Ossiarch stuff, I thought, well, let's maybe just try the bones. Let's also do them in oils because that's also different. What I also didn't have was stuff like this. I didn't have this either. Didn't have any of these things. So these are from Green Stuff World right here. And I thought we'd try and use combinations of these. Now you have seen other Green Stuff World texture plates. I think I've done a few with these. I think there was the Morgul Knights and some of the Song of Ice and Fire videos done with these guys. So we might use this plate too. This one's more of a battlefield thing. I don't think we'll get to this because it's really more, I think, for movement trays. But these are your crunch times, right? I know I keep calling them texture plates. Well, I mean, resin plates, right? We'll work with some of these guys here. I love these things. Really hooked on these guys. Now, what I also have here is some older Warhammer stuff. And instead of just a bunch of skulls, piles and piles of skulls, I thought, what if we could maybe combine some shields in here? Maybe not necessarily the undead looking shields, but just like this, right? Some very simple, especially something like this, some broken things like that, maybe some broken blades. I mean, look at this. That's relatively simple there. We also have some skeleton bits here. So maybe not necessarily, something like this, a more normal helmet. Maybe not something that looks more along the lines of the undead type, but look at this. So things like this, I think we could combine them in addition to these texture plates. I haven't really tried that. We're also going to use, I think, some tree bark to get some extension on our bases. It means we're going to have to be using some of our texture paste like this, our earth texture. We'll do a few cav just because I want to show you how to do the larger bases, right? Now, we won't necessarily be painting every single one of these guys because there might be a little repetition in there, but I tried to choose ones that were as different from each other as possible, different poses of these guys. The bases aren't all that big, so that's the other reason why I want to use a few more of these because while love me the cavalry bases, there's only so much you can fit on these little 25s over here. Now, the other thing that I just kind of made a little bit of a change, I thought, what if we were to give stuff like our iridescent pearl white and perhaps even, and I'm just going to see if I can't find it here, it keeps getting pushed around into different areas. So perhaps maybe on the few parts here that are metal, maybe we give these a shot. Before we get into the Necrons where the whole thing is going to be metal, what if we were to just mix some of this interference blue with some colors in the shields? Because that, talking about a different texture from what you might end up seeing with, say, your bone. So just an automatic difference. Because look at this. You can see that. Obviously, the bone texture is not going to, it's going to be almost more like this. Yeah, I mean, even more like this. See that kind of a washed out color in comparison. So I thought this is kind of where the new comes in because I've never tried these before. I have absolutely no idea what to expect from these. So we'll just kind of find out together on those. But the focus for this episode is on the basing. And what we'll do is we'll make a bunch of these and then we'll just paint a few. Not all of them, but I think we get the idea. Just painting a few and then we'll be ready to go with now we'll be ready to go with our parts 3, 4, and 5. Really been excited. Look at all of this, and I thought it'd be really interesting because with all of this, and then of course the bones inside. Now, what if those are? Still haven't decided if those are going to be glowing or not. I think that's something I might want to do. So you also might get that additional effect. Yeah, there's all kinds of bones and skellies in there. Look at that. I know that's kind of their lore. That's what they're all about. See those little skulls peeking out at you right there. Now we're not going to be doing a whole bunch. Not going to be doing anything with Scopy. It's really going to be trying to combine this bark, these texture sheets, and some of these extra bits and the skulls. Now we're going to get to that next. Let's see what we can get done with these texture plates. Now I've got one that was started out here, and this would be about the most basic way to think about this here. Just somehow, I'm almost thinking of gluing this down. Just thinking, how do I cut this necessarily? Yeah, I'm gonna have to go this way. So, because I'm trying to also not cut these things off like halfway right through the skull, so we're just gonna go like this, and let's see if this works. Because this could still be used. See, that is still perfectly usable. You can chop away some of the individual skulls like that. Now, of course, sometimes they might just go flying. All right, now here, I'm less inclined to just chop this way. I'm going to see if I can kind of score the edges. See, those, I don't want to necessarily break all of this. I would like to score it, though. This is yeah, it's on the thicker side here. Now I'm going to basically, see, I kind of pop that into like as close to the line of skulls as I could. And as I look at this, I can see now I've got a little avenue right here. So here's another little piece that's gonna come off. But see, those two skulls are, they're totally usable. I'm gonna put this off to the side so I don't lose those. We're just gonna do one of these because this is really it's sort of almost on the plain side of things here. So you saw how I try to cut along the line of those skulls so we can preserve this piece. And then we're just gonna snip along the edge of this here. I'm gonna snip that one away. And while it's not gonna follow the edge of this base completely perfectly, I think it's close enough now. We've got our block here that also helps protect our hands when we're doing stuff like this. I just can't suggest this enough. It's not, if it was expensive, that'd be different. This is a $30 thing, but it's just, it's one of the cheapest things you can have as far as doing this basing stuff here. It's really hard to find this X-Acto knife. You could probably buy 2 of these for just one of these X-Acto knives. Not expensive at all. And for the potential, no, I mean, it saves you hassle on cutting up your table, much less yourself. So there we have it. And yes, it's maybe not a perfect thing. Actually, what I'm also going to do is maybe carve this skull down a little bit so it's and see, here's one that just doesn't make a whole bunch of sense. I'm just going to carve that one away. Again, just going to carve that away. We can use a little bit of our texture paste over the top of that to hide any edge. And I mean, there you have it right there. That is as simple as it can get. We'll just set that off to the side. But remember, now we have these that we could combine with, say, tree bark or whatever. I mean, you could combine it with the cork too. We've certainly done that. But you saw I just kind of leveled off that edge just a bit right there. I think we got another edge over here It's just important to get rid of those so that it actually sits where you want it to go. I'm going to grab cavalry base here. Now, which one of these guys might be better suited for it? And I'm thinking maybe I'm looking for one that has as few, well, basically as few legs as possible touching the base. Now, this one, definitely not. This is one for the tree bark so that the base gets extended out. So that is not going to be one of them. Neither is this one. It might actually, believe it or not, have to be the sky, which is, it's not super ideal because, oh, look, a flaming skull, but it's still just 2 legs. Now, where this one could be interesting, it doesn't have to be the entire thing is all skulls. It could just be, wow, actually, we could potentially even use this one here. And let's look and see, where would our cut line be? Are we right around here? That's not too shabby. That's not too bad. So I'm going to try and position this here, and then hopefully I can locate one of these markers here. Do something like this. And we'll see how successful we are with this. And I'm just looking to score this a bit here. It's not looking to cut all the way through this. That's a good way to get yourself sliced into pieces. Just look, you can see how that's stuck into the block. But the more I score this, the better chance I have of getting a clean-ish break. And now I'm just going to give it a couple test bends here. Look at that. And as you can see, we didn't really lose much in the way of texture either. Look at this. So it's with these things, you do have to kind of plan at least a little bit. All right, now we do have some overflow. Look at that. That's kind of a nice edge right there. We're just going to give this a bit of a cut here. Actually, just going to maybe try and preserve this, if possible, because I might even be able to put this and patch some other area. Now, sadly, it looks like we're going to have to lose that head. That head's going to have to go away. We can round these, touch more. Again, we're going to be using our paste to fill in gaps. I'm just looking at this to see if, I could maybe should add just a touch more off of here. So yeah, the head has to be removed, but let's see what we can preserve of that head. Okay. So, such as it is, that has been preserved. And how much overhang do we have now? Not quite so much. So that can be cut away. And this would just cut away at the a bit of the underside there. If a little bit of it hangs over, not a huge tragedy. So I think we're pretty good there. Now we're just going to go after this edge a bit. And this is not so much cutting away as it is sort of actually cut, almost like this is sculpey. See how I'm kind of doing some insets here, like carving around some of the bones. just like here. I'm trying to create a bit of a like a trough for maybe my texture paste to go into, or other skull. And you can see what's happening here. See, I'm trying to bevel this edge just a touch. I think I'm going to actually reduce the brightness on this. That might be, it's a little bit easier for you to see. So again, this is a simple device right here, using these crunch times texture plates. That's not terrible. Now we have to figure out where the heck is Mr. Horsey going to go, and I'm thinking right about there. And of course we're going to have to drill our holes in the feet, but this is going to have to be cut off too. Unfortunately, that cannot stay there, but it can be partial. Yeah, we could preserve a good portion of it. Decent amount of that preserved. I see there's a little extra here on his foot. I'm just going to get that cut away. Or is this way better? No, that's hanging off a little too far from the base. And I think we're better off over here. So we're going to get our glue on this, and then we're going to see if we can't maybe drill some holes here. Okay. And we'll just let you do your thing while we get some holes in these guys. Now we're just going to use one of our pin vices here. Let me see if I can find one second here. All of a sudden, all of the pin vices just happen to have disappeared. Not quite sure where they all went. That is, okay, just a little bit further in the shelf. So, pin vise, sorry for the delay there. And I think I can get away with just drilling one of his feet, because drilling two of these is going to be tough to get to fit. Sometimes it's easier to just fit one, and then instead of trying to drill a second hole in a different foot, actually we'll just use some skulls, build some skulls around that just to hold it in place. Now, I can only drill this so far before it pokes out the other side. We don't want that either. So that hole's not going to be terribly deep, but this is just a plastic figure. And for pins, as always, we are going to use paper clips that have been hopefully adapted to our pin vise as closely as possible. And of course, now the reason why this one, see, is kind of broken off here, it's because this was used for cutting these pins. Because this is really hard. This is not pewter or anything like that. So this is pretty hard metal here. And you can see all the little divots and stuff in it. That's from years of cutting things like this. This hard metal right here. Okay. Get that stuck in there so that has a chance to dry. Oh, now for this guy. And you can see where we're trying to drill this into his ankle here. Especially with something like this, a skeleton, you don't necessarily have the largest area to drill into. And if you can see how the drill bit, it looks like, I'll do it this way. See how it's actually going into his ankle? Don't be starting the hole over here, because sometimes just absent-mindedly, I haven't done the hole as far back as I should have, and the next thing you know, there's a drill bit sticking out of the foot, or it wasn't parallel enough. These blocks help you keep that a little bit more parallel. All right. Cut this pin here. We don't need it quite so long. We'll glue this, and as we wait for that to just, it's not going to dry completely. What we are going to do now, let's get these guys. We're talking about this. Let's get ourselves just one of our destroyed brushes here. I think we've even got a smaller brush that we can use. Yeah, we got an even smaller one that we can use. Oh, I wanted to save that too. Is this another piece we can save? Nope, that is just, that's just straight up junk right there. I'm not going to do a bunch with rocks and gravel either. I think we're just going to really stick with the paste and some of these extra little weapons and that sort of thing. So what I'm probably going to do is use this one to place that, and then the second one here, because unlike some of our other stuff that we did with paste, this is about as, I don't know, as careful as you're going to see me work with this paste, or as gently. Normally it's just kind of slap it in there, cover it with rocks, do whatever. I have to have a more deliberate approach with this. And I think you get the idea. What we do here is we're kind of matching this texture with this. That might even mean doing a little bit of stippling with the brush, sort of like what we would do, I don't know, maybe with the oils. And by stippling like this, it brings up a little bit more texture. See how that just sort of fills all that area in real nice. And if it overflows too much, I'm just going to take my finger, I'm going to wipe some of that away. I could sand this away too if I didn't necessarily like what I had. And it's all about just filling that gap. We don't really want a gap sitting there, because then you'll really know there was a texture plate here, or a crunch times resin plate. So this is where you can see where I carved that area a little bit further back so that it gave me a little more room for stuff like this. And where possible, I'm trying to incorporate that back into the texture plate. And then I'm just going to get rid of whatever extra is there. Just making sure there's none of that smooth carved texture, but so it looks like it's ground, it's whatever. Okay. Got some more over here now. And I think we are good to go on this one. We've got that relatively well incorporated. Don't need to worry about anywhere else. And then this one here, it's going to be a very similar process. You could easily get, I'm just out of these sheets here, you could do with that. There's 2 of these in a package. Barring the large creatures, if you just did the texture plates and not incorporate the bark and the other things like we're going to, I guess you could get maybe a mid-sized Sigmar army out of it. Oh, no problem, a Warcry warband. Probably a giant Warcry warband. I don't know if there's any. I've never actually played it. I know that most times you see but somewhere between 7 to 9 figures out there, depending. And I think we've got that. All right. All good. We're going to be using the texture paste a lot more on some of our other bases for sure when we try to combine these with something like, say, the tree bark. Now, I think we've got a pretty straight pin here. I don't need a very long pin on this. Let's try and figure out where is a good level spot for him to stand. And also, there's a sort of a natural little divot right there for a hole. It's actually in the nose of one of these skulls right here. So just pardon the back of my hand as I drill this here. Yeah, I think we're already through. Boy, that is so hard. I can't even see where the hole is. I mean, it literally went right through his eye there. Okay, yeah, that's pretty good. Just take our glue here. You know, I'm gonna maybe hit this again with the drill just to make it a little bit easier to get him in. And I might have a little bit more glue on his foot as well. Okay, that's him. We'll set him off to the side now because he needs to dry a wee bit. This is a little bit off kilter. We're gonna straighten this out. Yeah, see now that's more of a straight was that perpendicular line as opposed to a kind of a line on an angle. And if you remember, this is the area that we were targeting over here. Something like this maybe. So his front foot could go there. This foot, I think if we drill this hole right over here. So this is I have to do this again. That's my target right in here. It's just kind of a natural little fault line there. A little depression in the texture plate, and I'm going to try and take advantage of that here. Can see that hole a little bit easier because it's not going through a skeleton's eyeball or eye socket. And interesting. Okay, all the better. And it's relative. Yeah, that's going to work. Let's get ourselves some glue on this. And it's actually the back foot that's going to make contact with the plate over here, which is kind of interesting. So that's in a whole different manner than I thought, but sometimes you just go with what you got, because here we had a little bit of a depression in the plate. So what we'll do is, while these two dry, now we're going to try and do some combination things. The plate, like these pieces here, and we're going to use some of our tree bark, and we'll do that next. We're back to see if we can combine the texture plate and the bark, and we have one of the few guys that's up on this like his one foot right here, his one leg. So that means trying to find ourselves an interesting piece of tree bark. Now this one I'm gonna probably see can be saved for one of our cavalry here. Now these 25 mils, they are not exactly the most expansive for. Yeah, there's nothing I can do with that. It's just too big of a piece. Now maybe we just can't combine the tree bark and the skulls on these bases. If this was a bigger base, maybe we could. But I'm just getting myself a flat edge down here, something to glue to this base. Well, that one just, that's interesting. That kind of broke apart. So actually this one's a better one for just a couple of extra skulls. But wait, we have more. We're going to break this. I think we're starting to get somewhere now. This is a little bit curved on this side, so we're going to file some of that or cut some of that down. And this is, wait a minute, combining the bark and the skull, because here he could actually stand on that little bit of tree bark. Now, before we do that, I'd rather, no, I'm going to have this shorter one right here. Or do we? I'm actually going to go this way with it. And you can see we've got just some pieces that we can actually preserve here. So more skulls that we can preserve. Oh, look, we could do something like this. Actually, yeah. So let's see if we have we have a smaller piece of tree bark here for something like this. And then again, we can put him on that tree bark. So we'll save that. I'm going to cut away a little bit of this. I don't want it to be a straight line necessarily. I might even go with, no, not going to go with that side, but we will go with this side here. We've got ourselves some skulls now. That's a bit too even of a texture. We just broke that a bit. And I just need to shave this down. I could also use my sanding sticks or whatever if I feel like I want to really level that out. Our glue, bark, skulls, and we'll do some more with our texture paste here. Now we could also move the skulls over this way. And remember, we've got some of these little skull bits right here that we can still use. We got this one sitting right over here. Where's my brush here? Paper towel. And just going to get myself a little pile going here. I'm not going to do this whole thing because it needs a few minutes to hold itself together. But I also, we could, I might bring out some of this. Yes, we'll have some of that too. I knew there was something else I was tempted to try. So again, those leftover pieces, I was hoping to do something that could show you what to do with those, because you're going to end up with those things inevitably. There we go. All right, so now it's sort of set down in here. It looks like it's sort of buried in there. Next, more of our paste here. Really bury this thing. Oh, what the heck. I'll just throw some over here too. And while we're doing that, we need a little, here, let's make a little container of our crackle paste. Not going to use the GW stuff. I'll just use this. And remember, the thicker you make this, the bigger the cracks you're going to get. When you thin this down, you will get smaller cracks. And you can also mix this with the texture paste too, if you remember. All right. We're good to go on that one. And we'll just set this one to the side over here. While we're thinking about it, let's get a hole drilled in his foot. Give that just a little more chance to dry. We have ourselves a pin all ready to go. And then we'll do a horsey, sort of combined with both of these materials. He goes with that. Now, this is one that's got the, you know what? He's only on 2 legs. It's just these two, which is interesting because that means that might mean we could. I'm going to try and actually split this in half. Ah, there we go. Excellent. So I got 2 for 1 out of this. I was hoping, I wasn't sure if I could, but I was hoping I could. And well, my next thing I'm hoping for is to have something. Ah, see, now we got space up here for some skulls and such things. Now I'm also going to, I think, trim this back over here. A little more, and we're also going to have to throw some texture paste down when we glue this on. Now, what also is handy, remember the large X-Acto knives, the one with the extendable blades? Those are really handy. I'm just going to break that off. Ah, now that's going to sit much more level, and guess what? We have a much bigger area for something like this. Okay, look at that. That fits very well. And then we have some of these other bits and pieces like that. So to me, that's just saying, well, let's just use what we got here. And that is what we shall do. Give those a little bit of a cut there. Look at that. Yeah, perfect. Perfect. First, I'm going to throw down my little texture paste, though. And just don't mind if I refer to it as that. It's just, there's so many of these things. I am never going to just remember the exact name all the time. You'll have to bear with me as I call it something that maybe is different on the package. Where's my glue here, which I just had in my hands. Not super vital, I think, to have the texture paste here, but because I was able to get that reasonably level. Now, I do have a couple of my sanding sticks here. So we could make this more level. You look at all that stuff coming off of there. There's that. Some glue here and over here. You know what? I'm going to do something preemptive, and I'm going to get me some of this texture paste in here before I glue those skulls there, because something tells me that it'll be easier to work this around those skulls if it's in place already. I'm going to orientate this back to where I need it. Okay. Look at that. Now it's really incorporated. Yes. Bingo. That's what I was hoping for. Exactly what I was hoping for. Will it always work out quite that conveniently? Probably not. And then what we can do is just maybe think about some individual skulls up around here. But at first I want to get him, well, I'm not going to glue him on, or this is also the advantage of having the, instead of the, maybe the skulls that you're drilling into, but the tree bark, I can have the figure itself be a little bit more separate. So I'm just going to take a little bit less of this here, incorporate my two halves so you don't see that empty seam anymore. Good to go. Covering up that seam over there. Now before I do anything else, time to drill a hole here, and this is definitely, this is where it should be, is right there on that foot. And again, we've got to support this because with skeleton things like this, now they've made these feet relatively, surprisingly actually hefty, which is nice. Makes this part a little bit easier here. Get ourselves a decent hole working in that. Glue this. And then we'll give this as many minutes as we can. We'll put him off to the side. Now this is back. And just so that that's not like a lonely texture over there, I'm also going to put some of this over here. And then we've got our crackle paint, which also we're going to let that mix. Here, I don't think that's going to do very much over here, but what the heck, we'll just mix a little bit with that. And you can see that it's kind of a grayish brown. It's where the two have mixed together. Now let's go back to our infantry over here. There's my drill. Looks like that's where my hole's got to go. Again, sorry for the back of my hand here. And poof, there it is. There's another base right there. Get some of our paste in here. I had to let the glue, if I had stuck my brush in there right away, I would have ended up with super glue on the brush. And well, it's a junky brush anyway, not a big deal. You could clean it out of there with rubbing alcohol, but it would make it sort of unusable right away. And I kind of need to be able to use this to keep going here. I'm just going to fill in. There's a little gap over here. I'm going to fill that in. Oh, here's a little bit of our, what the heck, we use a little bit of crackle paste in that. See what happens. Or a lot. There's another one. We'll go back to our combo bark and skull plates. Now, is that looks like a 90-degree angle. Oh, well, okay, that was a 90-degree angle. This was not. So I had to bend that this other way. So yeah, that would have been interesting. He would have been leaning over a little bit. He would have been sort of a drunk Ossiarch there. Now this back foot's got to hit about over here. I'm hoping I can get this just in the right spot. So, all right. Now, right as it is, you can see that's not quite what we're looking for. So what we can do is we're going to manipulate this. We are going to bend, and this will be an interesting little adventure. Let me just get some of these little pins out of here so I can use those. I'm going to use this one. And I'm just going to bend this pin back this way with the goal of making that back foot touch, which now it does. Yeah, see that back foot touches now. Another thing that I can do right here, I'm going to grab one of these guys. And I'm just going to shave this down a teensy bit here. And I'm just going to hit that with a little bit of glue here. And as I do this, bang, now, yeah, that foot's got somewhere to go. And I need to also continue drilling a bit because the pin is long enough where it's touching the base. So this is going to go now through the base. It's kind of important. And you know what? I'm just going to glue this guy on here. I think we'll be able to paint this part even with him. Look at how much that pin is bent. That is really, I had to bend that thing a lot to be able to make this work the way I wanted it to. But that was worth it. Actually, you know what? The pin didn't line up right, so I'm just going to cut this off. And now he sits down onto the wood itself. I'm going to do a check. He is straight up and down. He's not leaning over one way or another. But while I'm thinking about it here, let's add something interesting, like just something simple like this. We're going to add a shield here, like right over there, and maybe just a few skulls. Let's get our file over here. Okay. All right, simple enough. Doesn't have to be perfect or anything. So that can just be literally glued right over here. I'm thinking I'm actually going to just throw a little paste here first. That's to fill in gaps. A wee spot of glue. That feels like it's set down there real nice. So a little bit of a shield there. Okay. And I don't want just like have a little shelf and then skulls. So I'm just going to grab some of the skulls off of this sprue right here. What the heck? We'll use this one right here. I'm just going to file away this mold line here. And I could even have it sit right where that, oh, that is a nice composition right there. So I hope you can see this. Now I don't want everything to just kind of fall apart on me here, but I'm just gonna get some glue here. And my hope is that he just sits right in there. What else is that doing? Remember we talked about if it's only pinned in one place, you give him some support by doing, well, something like that. Look at this little set right there. To me, adds a whole bunch. It adds so much. Just my accent. Maybe here we'll do a couple of just regular old skulls here. So we'll get this one. We'll get this one. And this is off of the GW skull set right here. Because for those not familiar, and I have not had a chance to read this whatsoever, the whole Ossiarch deal is that they just the bone tie. They just kind of go around. They just collect, soldiers, right? And I guess if you don't match their tie, then they just take people. If you don't have enough, I guess, skeleton or skeletal warriors here to suit their purposes, they'll just snag some. Tempted to throw a couple back there, but let's just put a couple over here. And you can see we grabbed two different types. There's your one. And here is our shorter one right there. So just kind of, yeah, look at that. And who knows, maybe this one right here. Again, I'm just filing down some of the mold lines on it. I was tempted to put it on top of, yes. I'm just going to throw it on top of this here. It might give us an even different look to our... No, actually I want one of these. I'm going to go with one of these guys here instead. Change your mind. I always have the right to make a sudden change here. Aha. So you see what I did right there? I just put one right in there, and now all of a sudden these piles look a little more interesting. Speaking of interesting, I've got myself an edge here that should have some texture stuff on it. Now it does. All right. So there's a couple of bases for you. I really, 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 really like this one here. Yeah, it's almost like we made ourselves a little bit of a diorama here. So next up, what I want to try and do is some more of these combination style bases, kind of fill out the rest of the unit, maybe use some different size skulls, do more with this stuff, or maybe even the guy is actually walking on this on the 25 mil base. So now we're going to try and use maybe all of the pieces in various combinations on our bases here and see what we come up with, and we'll do that next. So let's try to make ourselves some other combination type bases here if we can. And I know I just talked about this thing here, this little broken, shield thing on our sprue here. That looked interesting because, we have him who could just be running along this plank. Now I could just fill some ground around this, or we could have that sitting on a texture plate like maybe this. I don't know. I'm going to give it a shot. May not actually like this at all, but only one way I'm ever going to know, and that's to give it a shot. Actually, I kind of, actually I like that sort of straight up as it is. Yeah, sort of like that as it is. And I'm going to look for another guy here that might be able to squeeze onto that. See if I can find one here. Wait. Actually, I like this one here. Sometimes there's you see something, you think, oh, that'd be neat for this, but he's almost like I want it to almost look like he's climbing upwards here. So once again, we will change this. I know this happens a lot. I hope it doesn't freak too many people out that I'm just kind of constantly changing things all the time. Say, well, let's do this, and then say, oh, wait, let's do this instead. I'm just gonna do the usual thing here, carving that down. I'm gonna glue that real quick like. And while that has a chance to dry, where did this guy go? It's gonna be tough. I'm just gonna I just had to sneeze for whatever reason, so if you see a little bit of a break in the sound there, now you know why. Here, let's try this once again here. Just looking to get a decent hole drilled into there. We have our little piece of pin. And hopefully we can get this thing to actually go in there instead of just gluing my fingers together. Sometimes you get a little burr on the end of the pin when you cut it with these things. And it actually, I don't want to say it like cuts into your skin, but it digs in there just enough to stick there. So the pin comes with your hand. All right, shall we try this one again? And I think we're just going to try that sort of on its own. Now, actually, I have, as you can see here, these little things kind of help set it on an angle, but I'm not so sure. I think what I'm going to have to do is actually put it on some kind of a piece of tree bark. You know what? I am going to combine these together here. So there's another combination on the way. Little tree bark and our shield. So tree bark. And which way should Mr. Shield go? Probably this way. Okay. Okay, I'm just going to try and get that to lay flat. I do see some mold lines I need to go after on this thing. That's done. Going to use a little paste here to help cement this down. And that is also going to have to go off to the side while I drill a hole in this foot here. Yeah, see that whole leg was flexing there. That was even with the jeweler's block. It was doing that. We have our hole drilled here. Maybe a little more. Some glue. And hopefully we have a little more success gluing this guy in there. Gonna use this, press it down. That's okay. Some paste on this here. And sometimes I might build this up even more in some areas. But we're going to use it here to hide all of that stuff. And it's really structural. I mean, see that big old button? Now I'm going to have to let that's going to have to be treated gently as I go to drill holes or whatever into this thing. So to remember that. All right, one last hint of our paste here. And of course, this just looks like a whole lot of, well, nothing. But even when we prime this and everything gets unified and it looks less like a crazy quilt, that already, to me, makes such a big difference. Now I'm thinking his foot's going to go right in here. So again, we're going to drill this here. And make sure that goes all the way through the base to there. See how it's sticking through there. I'm also going to give it a couple of little gentle twists like this, just to enlarge that hole enough so I can make sure it gets through both things. Some glue on the feet here. Now hopefully you don't have to bend that pin now that we have glue all over it. I think it's at a good, it's at a good angle. Yep. See how it looks like he's sort of climbing up that, looks like he's sort of climbing up this thing now, which is really nifty because that's not exactly the pose of the figure at all, really. Now, do we put one of these skulls on there? Why not? So we have a nice little, because there's a gap right here. Now, I could just use my brown filler here for that. But we do have all these skulls and skellies that, well, that's kind of the gist of the army, right? They are the bone reapers, the bone collectors. Let's give them some bones. And I think what we're going to do is just a couple of segments of these. Oh, there it is. Boom. Right there. So it hides that gap in his foot, but now it actually really looks like something is there. Oh, we got the bone right there. We got some, yeah, I think, I could use a small, maybe a couple more of my little skulls, these over here. Boy, after having been without these for a while, it's kind of nice to actually have these back again and have a selection. I was down to, I had no more of the orc ones left. We were running low on our skulls here. So we're still using our texture plates, but like I said, we use a little bit of bark. We're starting to use some of our bits there from that other box. Yeah, there we go. Just the one. That's all. That's good. Good enough. And I don't think I'm going to do the object source lighting thing on these guys. Now here I'm going to have it look like he's sort of running up the ramp here. I guess I could have done plastic glue to this, but whatever. All right, now this again, I'm probably doing this a little bit sooner than it really should be done, but what the heck. I should be letting all this stuff just have a chance to dry, but who cares? There, boom. See, now he's kind of running up that little shield there, and oh look, we can grab some more skulls here. Plus, maybe some fun bits, maybe some arrows. Got a couple of these arrows over here. Where'd they go? Yeah, see these guys? I mean, one could be like literally sticking in the ground over here. Like they've tried to shoot him down. See? I don't think this is sharp enough to actually stick into the tree bark. For kicks, I'll try and press it in there and we'll see what happens. But I'm doubting that's going to be sharp enough to stick through that tree bark, but one never knows. Or should it be in that shield there? That could be fun. But I think what I will do is get a little bit of texture paste on here and then bury some skulls in the texture paste. Yeah, we're going to do this. You can see I've got to fill in some more areas over here too. I'm going to grab just a little bit of my crackle stuff here too. Let's throw up maybe a couple skeletons on here. Looking for a torso. We haven't done a torso yet. And I'm looking maybe for just a plain old torso that doesn't have armor on it. Now, I guess the downside to this is, well, you're out one guy from the unit here. Unless I just do something like this chest plate here. You know what? I might just do that. What in the world is that? It's a, oh, okay. Now, is there enough space for this on here? No, not enough space. I can see right away, not enough room for that. Is there enough room for this? Sorta is. And I'm just going to give some of these edges a bit of a file here. And hopefully by putting some of my paste and other things here, that gives it some room to grab onto or something to hold on to. All right, there. A touch more here. And this could be comical. I don't really think a tweezers is going to help me much here, but, well, I'm going to give it a try anyways. It can't hurt. Tweezers really have never been all that successful for me, especially since they end up with glue on them to begin with. I'm just going to do a little bit of filing here to get the glue away, and hopefully now it doesn't stick. Well, it's not sticking. Oh, then, yeah, the sticking problem is definitely solved. I was just hoping that I could actually get that to stick onto this. Right here, there. See what we just did right there? Sneaky. Yes. Okay. Now, hopefully in the time remaining here, we can do something with this. With this guy. Now, do we have to always be using a texture? You know what? We haven't used one of these. We haven't used this one here yet. And I'm just thinking, no, I want to do something with the tree bark here. Like a larger one with the tree bark. Where's my knife? And I'm just going to shave this part off. So I was getting some resistance there. I think you saw I went from just kind of doing this to, see here I feel no resistance, but I felt some resistance. I said, well, safer bet. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Bang. There we go. I like that. And there's even a little room for, I don't know, some skulls in there or something. Now here, this I would like to maybe flatten out a bit. Give it a little bit flatter. Again, this is some of my effectively using that like it is mortar. Some of my glue here. Oh yeah, absolutely. Just love that. And there's an arrow stuck in that. Wow, that's a pretty tough arrow to get stuck into the rock. But I need to give that just a minute or two to maybe dry. And again, see, I'm holding this down, holding that down to my rubber block. And voila. See, I don't think we're actually going to be painting the bases here. I think that's just going to be part of the overall painting of things. Since originally I wasn't going to do quite so much with the bone or whatever, but then I realized no, I have not done any new sort of skeleton type tutorials, and I certainly have done zero with the oil paints. I mean, we've basically just painted skulls on bases. We have not done any real kind of skeleton type of thing. And again, since there can be more Ossiarchs, and I have other individual things that I wanted to do. So, all right, let's get Mr. Horse here stuck onto this base, and that's my target hole right there. Again, ideally, we wait a whole lot longer to do this, but time's a wasting here. And I can see already that I need to bend this forward just a bit, because otherwise that other foot's just not going to touch. That foot's not going to touch if I don't bend this slightly. Aha, there he is. Both things touching now. Both of those are touching, and oh, maybe this is where we could potentially use our skeleton piece, our chunk of armor there. I am going to just fill this in real quick, this gap here. Okay, fill in the gap. Let's get ourselves a shield here. Oh, this is a good one here. That's kind of a classic, almost a chevron right there. And I think I've got myself another one of these heads that has just some of the hair still left on it. And I'm going to make sure I've got a couple of skulls set aside for myself here. We'll give these a quick file so we can build those up. Because I'm thinking the shield can go right here, right in this area that we just created here. This little bit of a... This is why I said I wasn't going to be using too much in the way of rocks and gravel and that sort of thing. Quick shot of glue here. So what I did was I broke that rock so that I could actually get this thing to fit in there. All right, that's sitting there now. I'm going to file just a couple of little skulls over here so we can fit those guys on this base. I'm thinking maybe a couple over here. I don't know, maybe by where the arrow is here. There's one. There's another one. Again, we can fill this in with some of our paste over here. One more little batch of it there. And then we'll put some up here. Again, we don't want to forget our crackle paste here. I still think that would be an interesting texture. And I see it's kind of filling in around his foot there too. So that fills in. See, that gap is going to be a little bit stronger now. Going to let that mix a little bit. And now I think I'm just going to cut this stuff off here. I'm going to maybe cut off some of these nubs here where the arms are supposed to go. So it's just like some armor that's sitting here. So I'm gonna put this little pile right here, and my idea is, I think you can see where the glue's gonna go here. Get these cut out. See, there's a chunk of armor there now, and I'm just gonna have the head over on this side because that might be sort of hilarious. See that? We're just and now on the other side we'll get another one of our little skull heads here. Skull heads? Really? Yeah. That too can be your brain on too much work and no sleep. But now we are just going to mesh all this together. So we got plenty of stuff going on with this base here. We got shield bits, we got bits of torso over here, we got all kinds of fun stuff going on. So we're just going to do another segment of this where we just try and do some different bases and make some more interesting combinations of stuff. Again, I think the painting the bases is just going to have to happen when we do the miniatures themselves. And I think that'll be just fine. So let's make some more bases. I've got a collection of those vampire counts parts over here. We got shields, and most importantly, we've got some torsos here with the idea that we could put some arms in here and maybe have the sword over his chest. It might have to be on the larger bases like him, but we'll see what we can sneak on some of these smaller guys. I think with the aid of some of the tree bark, we might be able to extend these bases out just a bit more. And let's see what we can do here to fill out the rest of this unit. Just gonna look for some. So maybe we'll do less with the what are we calling that? The texture plates, your crunch times, texture plates, and we'll just do more with some of our fun bits here because, well, we all probably have bits somewheres. I'm just gonna again get this more leveled off here. Give this a little bit of a file here. All right, that's not a bad size. I'm gonna just give this a little more of a scrape here. You can see, yeah, it's a little bit flatter. And what we'll do is we'll just do a bunch of these, and then we'll start to add some pieces to them. I also have some, I just have some skulls set up too. Now we've got a couple of guys that are sort of like this, where he's sort of almost like he's climbing up. Well, I thought that's a perfect one for that. What about this one? What the heck? Let's give it a try, see what we get. I'll break off a little bit from the end here. Look at that, it follows the circle of that base pretty darn well. And we'll just get these glued on so they have a little chance of, yeah, that one, I don't know. We might want him on something that's a little bit more flat. We do have another one of these guys that's almost advancing up. Yep, that's a good one right there. We'll continue, just kind of rapid fire, throw some of these guys onto our bases here. Let's, it's too bad. Yeah, that one's a little bit too small, I think. Maybe just a little bit too small. That is not a bad size. I do need to just cut this down, though. Kind of cut this down so that it is flatter on my base and I get more adhesion out of it. These are just plastic figures, so weight is not really going to be an issue. And I think I'll maybe just try to crank out 5 of these guys here. It's really more, I just want to show how to use those other bits, if anything else. Now, this one, yep, I think that's not a bad one for there. Oh, no, wait a minute. Actually, no. Put you on there. It's a slightly larger one. Let's see how this one works. So again, we're doing that same thing where we just cut some of that down. That is a much nicer large one there. And sometimes I do this just to rough up the surface a little bit. It gives that glue a little bit of adhesion. Heck, you could even maybe do that a little bit. Rough up the texture of that base too and just increase some of the hold that it might have. We'll set you off to the side now and just make a little bit of space for myself here. This one might need a somewhat wider footprint here. Well, we've got this piece. We'll just see if we can break that in half. Tried to break it in half. Didn't quite make it there. You never know quite how the bark is going to break. No pun intended. And I know I've said this before many times. I don't do anything special to treat this. I do prime it, obviously, and I paint it, and that's about it. None of this stuff is fresh off the tree or anything like that. It's had a little while to dry out, just kind of naturally. You could, aside from just picking this stuff up off the ground or whatever, you could, I think, try some mulch. Sometimes the mulch is a little bit harder than the tree bark though, because I've used that, and sometimes it gets a little bit harder because maybe it's been treated with something, whatever. All right, we got a quick 5 bases now. This one also gonna go off to the side so that glue can dry. I thought I had pins on everybody's feet, but this was an extra guy, so we're going to drill. I try to prep as much of this stuff in advance because, well, you don't really need to see me filing mold lines and drilling holes. You kind of saw how that worked. I just wanted to see it on a few of these guys, not every single one, because not everyone apparently is familiar with just drilling out bases. I mean, it's something that we've done for so many years, for so long, that it's just sort of second nature. We don't give it a second thought whatsoever. But for other folks, that really seems to be a big deal. Again, want to make sure you don't have your good clippers trying to clip these paper clips. They're tough. Like that one thing where you see I do believe it was trying to cut off a paper clip that snipped off that one piece of my snippers. Cut you down like so. And I think he's good to go right here. And of course that doesn't want to stick either. Let's get some glue on him here. Boom, there he is, and he looks like he's sort of advancing. So it looks like he's advancing up this slope just ever so slightly. I think this is one of our first ones here. And he sits in there just perfect. Again, another guy that looks like he's sort of advancing upwards. See how it looks like he's walking up that incline. I think this is one of our earlier ones that maybe he's had a chance to set, and he's also going to be walking up this slope. So see, there's a bit of a hill there. We want him walking up that. And I see I'm going to need to also bend this pin so that he's facing the right way. Now it's going to be tricky. The smaller your pins are, the trickier that is going to be. You just can't get quite as much torque on it. Okay, it's good to go. But even that was still not quite enough there. All right, I think this one might be dry enough. And let's see. Now, if we just do it like this, he's going to be ridiculous. And also, he doesn't want to stick. So sometimes we have... Well, actually, I'm going to use a little bit of my texture paste here because there's a gap to fill anyways. Like I said, we're pushing the envelope here, of course. Making this... we're just doing this way faster than I normally would. And part of the way I'd be, slowing myself down is a little bit like the oils. I would be basing so many things, and I mean a lot of different things. So I'm just going to throw this in right now. While we're thinking about it. So which way is the best way to go with this. We could have him just standing up here along that edge. Yeah, we'll just have him standing along that edge there. And I'm just going to throw some glue like this and let that capillary action do its thing. And let it just sink into here. So back here is a good space for possibly either a shield or... Aha! Speaking of shields, so these arms over here, can you see that? Okay, we've got these little square pieces here. That's, well, where they would grab the shield. But you need an arm that has nothing. So that's just going to be an arm that has nothing in it. I see a mold line here that I still have to get. I don't care if it's smooth. I mean, it's supposed to be a skeleton arm that maybe has been munched on by something. Who knows? And the hope is we can put this here. Maybe this sword arm. And maybe the other arm. Now, a couple things I could do. I could either cut this down a little bit, or maybe I'll just throw some of this on here. Okay, we're just going to put this out here. Get ourselves a spot of glue on it. Set this down. Of course, where I'd like it to go. And now, let's see where we can have his arm. Yeah, we kind of need it to attach here, so there we go. We'll just give him do we give him a helmet here? I might just support that head with something like that. Get a spot of glue in there. May not have the other hand. But see, there's you got kind of your little corpse dude sitting over there. Possible. That's kind of a fun little thing. It's not that hard. It's really not that hard. It's pretty darn easy. Now we'll bring back some of our other folks here. And maybe we keep this one a little bit more simple. We just give him a shield here. We'll give him a shield and then just throw a couple of skulls on the other end. So shield here. And then let's see what we can do skull-wise here for him. So first off, I'm going to try and fill in a few gaps over here. Like I said, I prepped a whole bunch of skulls, a bunch of different pieces so that we could just spend time doing this. I wanted you to see the prep on the other stuff because maybe there are some of you not quite familiar with it. Back to my glue here. There's one skull. There's a second one. And then we'll complete, fill our gap. Huh. There's my that's my crackle paint. So obviously it works. It makes crackles. We're going to use some of that over here. just for fun. So some crackle paint now. Okay. Is this big enough? Does looking to see, is this big enough to have a whole corpse here with a complete with a sword? No, I think maybe we'll save some of the other ones then for. Yeah, we'll save some of the other ones for our horsemen, which will probably be a separate one. First, though, I'm actually just going to throw some of my pastes on here. All right, some paste, some crackle. Do I have? Oh, I only have the one torso anyway, so that's just fine. I could put this. Yes, I have this. Some armor here that I can do. I'll just sit there. Let's have ourselves some skulls alongside of it. Just skulls. Lots of bones. I mean, at least according to what I just sort of just trying to think of the lore of this here. I mean, they are, and the whole thing is this: they're bone collectors. They're after this stuff. So why not have a fair amount of it sitting around on their bases? There's another one. Now this guy. So I was also thinking of a spear on one of the, maybe a broken spear that just kind of bent instead of breaking. But something like a broken spear, like so. Just quickie little battlefield things. None of this is earth-shattering, but I still think it adds. I still think it adds a lot. Gonna use my tweezers here. So your spear there, skulls there. And shield here. You know what? I'm just gonna throw that skull in here. And I'm even gonna throw in a dot of glue there just to make that stay. Just to make sure. And there's one last guy here. Would really like to have all of these guys on bases. So that last segment can be our horse, and he is kind of a sort of a champion style figure, or the leader of the unit, whatever you'd call him. Yeah. So what we're saving all of their special extra stuff there for this guy, and we'll do that in the last segment there. So we've got a head. I just want to make sure that I've got the enough pieces saved for that. Over here, not a bad place to maybe add a few heads. Where's another small one here? Again, kind of counting on the capillary action of that glue, and it really does the job. One more of these guys, and that is it. So there's our, you know what? What the heck? Let's go. Let's just be crazy and put one more in here. Come on. You know you want to have one, especially one that's screaming like that. Perfect. There we go. Just right. So that was 5 quick infantry. So you can see when everything is all prepped and you got all these things ready to go, you can sort of jump through these guys as long as you don't knock them over like that. That's probably less of a good idea. And again, some broken weapons, shields, spears, whatever. Look at that. 5 guys looking pretty nifty. They even have some of the crackle paste on their bases. So next up, last thing, is this guy, and we'll do a grand finale with all those extra little weapons. I'll see if I can find a nice piece of bark, because if you look at this, you have 3 of his feet on the ground here. So we got to get ourselves a good piece of bark for that, and we'll be right back. We have one more cavalry that we're going to put on a base here, and I have a choice between 2 pieces. Now this one was bigger, which meant that I could put more things on it, and that was kind of neat. It was a little bit on the lower side. This is taller, and I got almost like some shelves here that I could work with. Now what I did, this, you've seen me do this in the past, I spread out my material here around these edges so that when I put this down, and that was relatively fast. I spent a little while sanding that thing down. And see how that kind of squeezes out now from underneath, but it's a little bit easier to deal with this sometimes. That's why I did it in advance, because, well, it's a little easier to do that when without the cameras being on and stuff. And sometimes I'll just take a piece of this, because I didn't want to use a brush in here with the super glue and such. So that is hopefully going to set. Now we've got this guy here, and his foot is going to go right there. This one has to go up here, and this one's going to be very close to the back over here. So let us see what we have here. Now I'm actually going to drill the hole in here. Yeah, that tree bark was harder than I thought. Well, some tree bark is just going to be harder, and some is just not going to be that hard. You never really know what you're going to get. And sometimes the initial part of it will be soft, and then it'll get really, really hard. And there we go, and we have mostly full contact. Almost full contact. I'm just gonna scrape some of this away too. You're not obliged to keep every last bit of that bark there. You can change up that bark too. Some glue time. Yeah, now that sits down there just nice. Also gonna sneak some glue over there. A couple other places. And I'm just gonna make sure he's not leaning over too far here. His foot almost touched this front corner over. That would have been really sweet if that was the case. Now, 2 places that I'm speculating on putting, and here let's put these pieces out here just so that we've got them So you can see him here. So there's our weapon arm. Here's our offhand. Remember, we've got to get these little boxy pieces off of here that are meant to hold a shield. So there's that arm. Now, I did see just a couple of crazy little mold lines here, and there's also this little ribbon that, well, I don't think we really need. So we've got that part. We'll give him his head. And we got arm, okay, and then we have the rest of our skulls, and we also have a shield. Now, if it's located here, well, first of all, we get a chance to paint it a little bit easier. I think it's easier to see than if it's over here. This gives us just more room, though. There's just physically more space over here for this thing. And I'm just going to kind of put this dry. Now, see, his head's going to be underneath the horse. If I do something like this, see, his body is here. His head goes here. This arm goes here. So I'm liking this better already. I'm liking that better already. And I'm also going to throw out a little bit of this. It's just going to act as a little bit of glue. I don't necessarily want to have extra glue. Speaking of which, I am going to just throw a little couple dots here. Okay, that is in place. Let's see if we can get this pointed in the right way. And if a little bit of my dirt gets on there, whatever, I mean, big deal. And he's sort of dead anyways. At least for the most part. He looks that way. Some glue. Now you could sometimes even just sort of bend these things a little bit. There we are. Look at that. Huh? That's looking kind of neat. And then let's have see if we can do something with his shield arm here. Yeah, that sounds pretty fun. I'm going to see if I can't get it to go underneath this sword. There. Okay. Not liking that, the way that's working. So it goes away. It was fouling up what I really liked. So instead, actually, I'm just going to clean this off, and I'm just going to bury his shoulder in some dirt here. It's just easier to do that. And remember, I still have all of those different Luke's APS, and instead of using the green, we're going to experiment with using some of the brown flock and everything else. Now I am, speaking of this stuff here, throw some of this out there. Let that mix, and now I've got that right over here on this foot. The pin was exposed a little bit. I mean, it's sunk down almost a half an inch into the base, but you could see a little bit poking out. Well, guess what? Now you don't see anything. It's all completely covered. Never know it was there. You'll never know there was a gap there, and it's going to be relatively strong too. Good to go. Shield to put down. And I think that can go over here. It's somewhat close to where he is. Like it looks like it belongs to him. And then we'll just start to add some of these extra skulls here. Get this one right there. Got ourselves a nice little shelf here. Let's see if we can't get just one skull onto that shelf. A skull on a shelf, like an elf on a shelf, just made out of bones. Yeah, if that's not wanting to stick, I'm just going to give it a little bit of help. There. I was just looking at some of this stuff now. I can't quite use any of those. I'm just going to look at my bits over here. I'm thinking of maybe a spear. There it is. Especially one that has some damage and stuff on it. Now that also means I've got to real quick here do some filing of mold lines. Yeah, it's weird because these kits, which to me in some ways seem new, these are pretty darn old now. It's hard to think of these as being the old kits, but they sort of are. Which way is interesting for this? Having it cross over the shield a little bit, maybe? Maybe so. And here, I'm just going to literally let the glue do capillary action instead of me fighting it. Just gonna let the glue do the thing. Oh, what the heck, I might even throw another skull right there. And maybe one more right here. Let's see if it's gonna let me do that. Uh-huh. Well, there's something that looks appropriately leader-like. Lots of extra little do thingies on there, so we just... Here, let's get some more glue on this puppy here and help him to stay there. There we go. Now what we are going to do is I'm just going to take pictures of these so you can see them in the closing credits and such like this. Then I'm just going to hit these with some lighter spray perm. It's going to look more like this because we're going to do this with our oils, and what I'd really like to do is have those initial glazes really wow you between the burnt umbers and some of the other things. I think this is going to be a really good exercise in several different colors. So thanks again, everybody. I appreciate you especially supporting this pledge. It's the most near and dear to my heart, of course, doing the army painting like this. I just absolutely love this. And not that I dislike painting larger scale things and all the fun stuff, the dioramas, but there's just something about this when you see a whole unit of these guys together. And hopefully this gives you ideas not just for these, but for even for some 40K stuff. I mean that they conquered worlds that were primitive too. So I think this is a pretty good start here. And we're going to go on from here to the coward test figure. And I think it'll just be one of the It'll probably be one of the cav, I think, just to, yeah, it might be one of the cav, just to really explore that whole idea of the bone and some of the metals here. So I will catch you on Series 20, Episode 2. And thanks again.